Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Stanley Dyrector Show. I can't wait to introduce my guest, Mr. Malcolm Marmorstein. He's a writer, he's a director. Golly, he's written so many things that would take me the better part of Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to tell him. But, Malcolm, I got to ask you. I mean, you wrote Pete's Dragon, you wrote all these great films. How did you get into show business? I mean, it seems like perhaps destiny might have touched you on the head with its magic wand.
It was the born in the trunk kind of thing. My father was a stage electrician, and when I was a kid, I was always seeing shows. I was backstage, and even out on the road with him. So I absorbed all the backstage atmosphere. I learned a lot of things. And as I grew up, I knew that that's where I wanted to be.
Backstage?
Yeah. And my first job backstage was when I was about 12.
Wow.
Running a backstage elevator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, between the stage floor and the dressing rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really cool. I think I got paid about $2
Really?
for doing it. It was wonderful.
But this was Broadway, huh?
Well, yes and no. It was at the Little Theater on 44th Street, which is now the Helen Hayes Theater.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have too many Broadway shows when I was younger. It was during World War II. The New York Times actually owned it.
Mm-hmm.
But there were concerts and all kinds of different things that I would work at. So at any rate, I eventually got old enough to get a stagehands union card.
Mm-hmm.
And then I began to work on shows.
Like what kind of shows? What shows did you work on?
Well, Broadway shows.
Yeah.
I was in college studying playwriting.
Uh-huh.
And I needed to get a job. My wife was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So my first job in a Broadway show was A Streetcar Named Desire.
You're kidding. Wait.
Would I kid you?
I don't know.
Did you bring me here to kid you?
Mr. Marmorstein, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
which company?
It was the New York company, the original company. The show had been running about a year. It was with Marlon Brando,
Wow.
Carl Malden, Jessica Tandy, Kim Hunter, mostly the original company.
Brando? I mean, what did you do? I mean, what were you?
Well, I was an assistant electrician.
Uh-huh.
So we had switchboards that I would, take the lights up and down.
Right.
And then sometimes I'd operate the sound.
Uh-huh.
And at those days, we actually had 78 RPM records. But so I did all that, and it was great. I was studying playwriting in the daytime, and I was doing the show at night. It was
Watching
fabulous.
Tennessee Williams' masterpiece. But I mean, how was it to be around Brando? Tell us.
Well, it was. You never knew what he was going to do next.
What do you mean?
Well, he was all over the place. He would joke, but when he got on stage, he was so into that part that it was incredible to watch.
Did he have to do any preparation? Or did you ever see him prepare to go on stage?
His preparations were mainly physical. For example, his first scene when they were coming back from bowling, he would get down on the floor and do 20 push-ups so that he was actually working up a sweat and was tired, and then went on stage.
No, and then he would do the scene, and he never did it the same way, is what you're saying.
Well, no, as I'd mentioned to you previously, he couldn't do everything the same way twice. He liked to do things differently. Sometimes his energy was higher. Sometimes it was lower. Sometimes, he would move to another place, which drove Jessica Tandy crazy. But most of the cast, they were all from the Actors Studio, so they could keep up with him. They knew what to do. They knew how to improvise with him. But he didn't improvise too much, but they knew how to move around.
Yeah, I remember you said he also, you said earlier, he told jokes and things like that. And so, I mean, this...
Well, he was in, I'd always be, when I was doing the sound, I always had time between cues. and I'd be reading a book. For example, we were studying Pirandello in school, so I'd be reading Pirandello, and he'd come off stage and see me reading something, and he'd say, "What are you reading?" So well, it's Pirandello. "Can I read it?" Yeah.
Really?
So he'd take the book and he'd sit there, and he'd read it, until his next cue,
Wow.
and then go on stage.
How fabulous! What other shows did you work on? Just.
Well, let's see. There was the revival of Pal Joey,
Okay.
Fiorello,
Oh wow, golly.
the love.
Damn Yankees!
Well, Damn Yankees, yeah.
Yeah.
Damn Yankees, A New Girl in Town, which was also Gwen Verdon and Bob Fosse. I did The Love of Four Colonels with Rex Harrison
Wow.
and Lily Palmer.
Well, did you ever have the desire to be an actor yourself while you were doing that?
Well, I did. I studied acting also. I had that bug, like I had to do it sooner or later, and I was in a couple of stock companies.
Right.
I did appear on Broadway for one performance.
Oh yeah.
I was a stage manager of a Thurber Carnival.
Oh, James Thurber.
Yeah, and at one matinee, which was a Thanksgiving matinee, one of the actors couldn't be there. But because I'd worked with the understudies, directing the understudies, I knew all the parts. So I went on for him.
Wow.
And it was fun.
This seems like this business destiny kind of pointed you in a direction, I mean, when did when did you start to write professionally? I mean, you were a playwright.
Well, it took years.
Years?
Years.
You mean you swept the floors, right? In the
swept
theater?
the stages. But what I did was this. I knew I had to write a play, and I needed the discipline. I also needed, because I have 4 kids, I also needed 2 jobs. So in the daytime, I worked in live television at ABC, doing shows like Johnny Carson, Who Do You Trust, and all the game shows. And I had a typewriter with me, and I had a night job at one of the theaters, like Fiorello. And in between shows, I would work on a script, and then do the show. In the morning, I'd get up at 5 o'clock and work till 7 or 8, and then go into New York and work on the TV show, and just kept doing it. It took me 2 years to finish my first play.
Wasn't that about a vampire or something?
No, that came later.
Oh, gee whiz, Stan, you're always putting your foot in your mouth. Go ahead.
No.
What was it?
So I just kept it was a backstage play.
Oh,
it was
okay.
never produced, but it was the first play I'd ever written. The object is to actually sit down and get the discipline to write. And that's what I did. I finally got that. So I was able to write.
How do you get the discipline?
Just doing it. Just sit down and say, I have to do it. This is my job. And you do it.
And which play kind of hit a little pay dirt for you? Because, I mean, you have done so many projects in Hollywood and Manhattan, and from TV movies to movies, and you've worked with some great people like Betty Davis, Elliot Gould, somebody I really love, Harry Gardino. In fact, there was a movie called Whiffs.
Yes.
I recall. As a matter of fact, you know what I did? I kind of was able to kind of get some photographs of Whiffs.
Oh, you're so sneaky.
And there's one right there.
That's it. Yeah, that's Elliot and Godfrey Cambridge. Godfrey Cambridge was playing a crop duster, and Elliot Gould was a human guinea pig for chemical warfare. And what they were planning to do was rob a town. Godfrey would fly the plane and drop gas, harmless gas, on the town, and then they would go in, and he and Harry Gardino would go in and rob the bank.
Very, very, very interesting idea. I wish I would have thought of it. But and I have to ask you, this process of writing for the screen compared to writing to the, being a playwright, I mean, that had to be some leap, huh?
No, not really.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
I actually did more screenwriting and television writing than I did playwriting.
But plays, you have to put out dialogue, lots of dialogue.
Yeah. What happened was I got some soap opera work in New York.
But wasn't there was a very famous show, was it kind of like a horror soap opera?
Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows, okay, yeah.
I'd gotten a job as head writer of The Doctors, and then I went on to Dark Shadows, which at that time was not a horror show. It was just a melodrama. And so eventually we decided to do a vampire, but with our own ground rules. And we had a very young audience. So I said, when you cast the vampire, get a young blonde guy. And I said, don't get anybody who looks like Bela Lugosi.
Like, I want to drink your blood, or something like that.
No, we're doing an American theme.
Right.
So, but they got a guy named Jonathan Fridd, an actor, who looked kind of like Bela. And so I talked to him the first day and said, don't do anything spooky. Just be a nice man, and all the spook will go on around you. And that's the way the show went, and it became enormously successful.
Yeah, I remember talking to you about that. But I mean, how did you get The Doctors, though? I mean, that's a medical
The Doctors,
show, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a medical show.
I mean, how did you...
It was easy.
It was easy? Gee whiz. Wow,
well,
I'd like
actually,
to know
I was a sub-writer on Love of Life. That was the first job.
Oh, that's a famous soap.
I was a sub-writer, which means that the head writers lay out the scripts, and they give you an outline, and you dialogue it. You write all the dialogue from that. And so I did that for a short time. And their agent wondered who I was.
Right.
And wanted to represent me, which he did. And he got me onto the Doctors, which I became head writer.
Oh,
So-
I mean, that is just like kind of, you read those things in books and all that kind of stuff, the way you come up through the ranks, so to speak.
They're tough shows to do because we had to do 5 shows a week. And I would write from 6 in the morning to 11 at night to try to turn out one episode, which at that time was about 30 pages. It was really a lot of work.
Did your wife and kids kind of say, hey, Pop, where are you?
No, they saw me. I was there.
You stayed at home?
Yeah, I worked at home.
Oh, okay. I thought that you had to, people work in the studios. And
I stayed at home because I could start early. And who needs a lot of people around?
Right. Did you ever work with a collaborator?
No. The only things that I collaborated on were film. But they were a different kind of collaboration. It was Andre de Toth, the director.
Oh, yeah. House of Wax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I worked in London with him on about 3 different projects for Cubby Broccoli.
That's the guy who did the James Bond movies.
Yeah. And so we worked together in London and turned out scripts. But Cubby would only do Bond pictures, even though he would like to think that he's going to do other pictures.
Right.
His focus was on Bond. So, but that's the essence of the collaboration I did.
We have a couple other pictures that I'd like to show, and I was wondering. There another photo of Whiffs.
Yeah, that's Harry Gardino and Elliot as human guinea pigs. Elliot was a soldier.
Yeah.
Harry Gardino was an ex-convict which is what they used to do. I don't know whether they do it now. They'd say to an ex-convict, look, you want a shorter term? You want to get out sooner? go over to the Army Chemical Warfare Corps and do some experiments for them. So that's what Harry was doing. And in that scene that we just saw, they were in a laboratory and they had been given nerve gas. And they were all over the place on the floors and shaking. And it was a very satiric.
Yeah, it was a very successful movie, too, I understand. Do we have any more? Oh, look at that one. Hey, wait a minute. That's a vampire guy, ain't it?
That's Christopher Lee.
Excuse my ain't, but, you know.
That's Christopher Lee and myself on the Disney picture, Return from Witch Mountain. He, of course, was playing the bad guy. And we were sitting on a hill downtown Los Angeles watching a big stunt being performed. It was a big hill, and the stunt driver had to turn over his wagon and make it roll several times. So that was taken that particular day.
In that film, Betty Davis was in that film.
Yeah, Betty Davis.
How was it did you ever talk to her or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had a run-in with her.
You had a run-in? Come on, share some.
Well, originally I wrote the script. Disney wanted me to write it for Shelley Winters, who was in Pete's Dragon. So I converted the part of a guy, a bad guy, to a bad woman, Shelley Winters. Then Shelley couldn't do it. And somehow Disney got Betty Davis to do it because she claimed her grandchild wanted to see her in a Disney picture.
Oh, really?
So she came and ready to shoot the first day. And of course I'm saying, my God, I'm writing for Betty Davis. I got to do better than this. So I talked to the director the night before, and I said, I'd like to fix this scene up a little bit. It's just a page and a half. So he said, yeah, do it. So I worked on it overnight and came in the morning, and I showed it to the director. He said, yeah, okay, give it to Miss Davis. So I go over to her trailer and knock on the door. And I went in and I said, John would like you to see these pages. It's what we're going to shoot today. It's essentially the same, but there are some different lines. And she looked at me very suspiciously. And she said, okay. So then I went back to my trailer, started working on some other scenes. And the assistant director knocks on the door of my trailer. Miss Davis would like to see you. So I go over to her trailer, and she looks at me with those Betty Davis eyes, and she read me the riot act. She yelled and she carried on. She said, I've been studying these lines. I'm ready to go with this line. You throw this at me. I don't do this. I'll walk. I'm ready to walk. I'm going to leave the picture.
Wow.
And I said, no, it's okay. Don't forget it. So I went to the director and told him. And he said, okay. So I went back to my office and started working some more. Another knock on the door. Assistant director, Miss Davis would like to see you. I said, could you tell her you couldn't find me? So I went over and I go in and she's sitting there. And she said, well, I looked at this and I can do this one and I can do this one. So I'll do this. She said, however, in the future, if you got changes, give them to me the night before, and I'll do them. And from that point on, we had a great relationship. In fact, every time she saw me, she'd say, have you finished rewriting the script yet? And I'd say, no, I'm working on your love scene. Of course, she was about 70-something. And she knew I was kidding, but I kept saying, I'm working on your love scene. And she said, how's your love scene? So finally, the picture wrapped. And we're having the wrap party. And everybody was getting up and saying something, and I get up there, and I said to her, you know that love scene that I've been working on? She says, yes. I said, well, here it is, and I kissed her.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's
you know, we did have a good time.
That's a great, you know, I know from other writers, they were usually never invited on the set. How did you get this kind of a situation where you could go on a movie set?
Well, I did Pete's Dragon before Witch Mountain.
Oh, which we also have a photo of Pete's Dragon. There it is, Pete's Dragon. with a little kid.
And the dragon is named Elliot, and named after Elliot Gould, whom I'd worked with a number of times and knew before he was a star.
Uh-huh.
So I was on the set there.
Right.
You know, they knew that I was interested in directing, so they figured, oh, go hang around the set. You know, as long as it doesn't keep you from your other work. So I was on the set most of the time, and I made changes and so forth. So then when it came to Witch Mountain, I worked with the director in scouting locations and setting it up. And he wanted me on the set all the time because we'd find a location that wasn't quite right but was interesting, and he'd say, what can we do with this? And I would sort of adapt it for the moment and show him how we could do it.
Was this a lot of your stage training that
I think
helped you?
it was my background, the theater, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I have interviewed quite a few people, and I mean, your background is just enormous. Broadway and that kind of stuff. Let me read some of your credits. Mary, Bloody Mary with Christina Ferrari and John Carradine. Terry and the Pirates, Weak Links, The Cloud, The Professor, The Silent Nine, Click of the Hammer, Roman Joy. Golly, a
lot of those weren't made.
There weren't.
No.
Oh, golly, Wally.
Surprise, surprise.
Actually, many things are optioned.
Yeah.
And they're called development deals,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people actually do make a living. I know I have a couple of friends who just do development deals, and if you get a film made, you're very fortunate. But you got films made, and also you wrote a great deal of television, and you're an active writer, and you have several plays out on the market, as a matter of fact. And tell us, is there a play about the vampire play? Really got you going, though, right?
Yeah, it was from doing Dark Shadows. It became such a success, and I always kept thinking, there's a play here. So I wrote a play called The Reluctant Vampire, about a vampire who comes back today and finds our lifestyle and everything we have to be so wonderful that he wants to become a human again, and which means therefore he will eventually die. But there's just so much that we have, he wants to have part of it. So and he comes back in the apartment or condo of a young woman, and so they have a romance. But what happens to him is he becomes too much of a human vampire, a guy who gets into business and becomes ruthless. And so that between the gal and himself, they work it out at the end. But that's the essence of The Reluctant Vampire.
Mm-hmm. Well, did you also do a...
and that was done off Broadway.
Off Broadway,
Yeah.
but it got you...
Yeah.
I mean, you
And well, also, we made a movie of it. I directed it with Adam Ant.
Oh, Adam Ant, sure.
But also, it was written to be a musical too. There's I've been working on it, and there's a score that goes with it. So it's one of the things for the future.
Do you sing yourself, or does your...
I don't have to sing.
Your gorgeous
You
wife...
have to sing. I don't.
Well, your gorgeous wife Barbara probably sings to you, and but I have to ask you this: which do you like to work better in, movies or TV, or the plays?
It depends on the project. It depends what it's about, because that's the exciting thing. How do you write whatever this thing is? Because even when I start things, I don't know how they're going to end. These things work themselves out. The story and the characters tell you eventually how to end it.
Malcolm Marmorstein, we're coming kind of close to the end of our show. Do you have any advice to give to aspiring writers?
The only thing you can do is just keep writing. Don't let anybody discourage you. Just write and write and write. Keep going.
But should you think about a day job too? I mean, while you're
doing it? If you have to. As I said, I had a day job and a night job.
Yeah, well, you were a guy that that just work day and night, but there's some of us kind of like the laissez-faire kind of life, and you know.
Well, that's tough.
I mean, so in other words, your vocation and your avocation are the same.
Yeah, I can write 7 days a week, which I frequently do.
What kind of a project would you like to get off the ground now? If I gave you, say, I was the man with the money.
It's hard for me to say that. You know, there's a new script that just went out this week. My agents just sent out. And I have a selection of other things that I start. You know, I have a few ideas, and I'll start it a bit, see how it goes. And start another one to see how that goes. And I'll pick up whichever seems to be, you know, more interesting.
So you're a polygamist. Why don't you admit it? You know, I happen to have a script. I want to tell you something. It's under the table. Weighs about 10 pounds. I think that you would be the right person. No? Starring, you know.
The right person to what? Lift it?
Malcolm, you know, it's been a joy, but do you realize that our time has just vanished, and I had so much more to talk about with you? I wanted to know who the most difficult person was that you ever worked with. And then
you.
They'll come in. That's what I figured. Golly, I just can't get a fair shake anywhere.
You know, you promised me a Jay Leno mug, and look what I got.
You got a Stan D freebie over here. And I have to tell you something. You know, if you wrote everything about your life story, I'm sure that would kind of fill volumes. But I want to say, my friend, Mr. Malcolm Marmorstein, thank you for entertaining us and giving us some advice, because, wow, I mean, you really have been very successful, and I congratulate you so much.